Good afternoon, David. Thanks so much for taking the time out to get involved in this week's Business Owner Spotlight. So go ahead, introduce yourself to everybody. Let us know a bit about what you do.
Hi, I'm David McCavery, and I head up the Ireland office of Tigerbond. We are an international integrated marketing brand with offices across the UK and Canada also, interestingly. So I've been doing that for about 3 years. About 3 years ago, I merged my own company into Tigerbond. So it's a joint venture in Ireland. So that's what I do, and I love it.
Fantastic. So what about Tigerbond then? You know, you mentioned marketing, but who is your ideal customer? Who would you most like to work with?
Well, I guess we've got a number of ideal customers already in our portfolio. So,
Sure.
I mean, for example, we've got a five-star hospitality brand. We've got one of the UK's largest retailers. We've got a whole cluster of brands from the construction sector, professional services, food and drink. So we've already got a lot of really nice clients that we work with across the UK and Ireland. But I suppose in terms of a sweet spot for us, we're really interested and we do really well with clients who are ambitious, they're growth focused, and they're probably brand challengers as well. But I think one of the most important things is they've got to have some sort of awareness of the value of marketing. They've got to be committed to it. Yeah. And they've got to have a budget to put behind it, of course, as well. And we find when all of those things converge, we can do really well for them and make a real difference.
Fantastic. You mentioned there you've been going about 3 years with the current setup. So I'm going to ask what sort of impact did COVID have on that, just because of the timings, and was what sort of lasting impact has it had? What do you do differently now?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm a PR man, but I'm not going to try and spin this one. It did have an impact, there's no doubt. I mean, we started with, Tigerbond was known by another brand before, just rebranded recently. It was known as another organization, and we joined it in October 19. And if your memory serves you, you'll remember that the crash came, as it were, in March 20. So we had 4 months of really sort of strong positive trajectory, and culminating in March 2020. And to be absolutely honest, by the time the end of April came, 2020, we had lost about 75% of our fee base. It just happened as quickly as that. And of course, everyone's panicking. It's rabbit in the headlights job. And I'm long enough to have lived through the previous recession in 2008, 2009. Yeah. That sort of time when I had a business as well. So I knew the sort of key things that you need to do very quickly in a situation like that. One of which is to look at your overheads. And we looked very quickly at our overheads. We availed of government support, of course, and I think that was the right thing to do. Yeah. So we cut our overheads back quickly. We sought to work with our clients even if we weren't getting full fees. We sought to keep the relationships going, and we actually overserviced very many of them during that critical stage, because while we were struggling, they were also struggling, and we were in it for the long game. So what we did was initially, as I say, consolidate the overhead base, pour a bit of extra time into the client relationships. And I think, those were two critical things that we did at the time that helped us not only get through that very, very painful process, but also to build even stronger relationships with our clients. And I think we're reaping the benefits of that now. We're not through, the recovery stage yet, to be honest as well. We're probably just about reaching pre-COVID levels at the moment, but it has taken a long time, but we are getting there. And, the past year has been pretty solid and it's been good.
Yeah, but the key thing there was taking swift action, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing, I suppose, quick action can be a number of things. Quick action can be get rid of people very quickly. We chose not to do that. We looked at different ways of working. We talked to our people. We looked at our office setup. We looked at smarter ways of working, and we cut costs that way. We maybe did less with freelancers. So we were able to act sort of reasonably smartly, I think, so that our team was kept intact by and large, and we were able to maintain our client relationships, which was crucially important.
Yeah, and paying you back now. So you mentioned there, it was some of that came from your experience with previous recession. What would you say has been the biggest learning you've ever had as a business owner?
I think the biggest single learning I've ever had is to keep an eye on costs.
Okay.
It's all about the money. And when you're in PR, you're in marketing, you're in sales, whatever it is, you always look on the bright side of life. and the glass is always half full. And I've learned that you've got to be realistic. You've got to be sensitive to the environment, and you've got to be cautious, I think, by and large as well, because ultimately, if you wait too long, which I did in the previous recession, to be absolutely honest, you can be left with some big decisions to take. And I would much rather have acted more quickly in the 2008, 2009 recession, and it would have been a lot less painful. But you live and learn, don't you?
Live and learn. Yeah, there's a
teacher.
A school of thought that says that if the decision is too easy to make, it's too late.
Yeah. So that's the way it is. But you live and learn, and they say experience is the greatest teacher you can ever have. So
yeah,
the experience of the end of 2000s, I think, helped most recently.
And what about I said COVID aside, what have been the biggest issues you've had to overcome then in your journey?
Apart from 2 recessions.
Just those 2 recessions.
Those little things. I think a couple of challenges, to be absolutely honest with you, one of them is the challenge of training colleagues, bringing kids in, nurturing them, training them, growing them, developing them. And then certainly pre-Tigerbond, when we had a smaller agency, having them poached on you by bigger agencies who paid them a few extra quid, and the lure of working in a bigger agency with apparently better clients often resulted in some of your best talent leaving. So that was a real struggle, and we looked at how we might address that, and we actually eliminated a layer of entry levels at one stage, the account executives, because those were the guys who were being snapped up. It was easier for the bigger agencies to get at them. We were doing really well as an agency. We're winning stacks of awards, doing really good business, and had a really strong reputation. And because of that, I guess our people were getting targeted.
Yeah.
That is less likely to happen now because we're part of a much greater agency with a better story to tell as well. But that was that, over the years, that certainly was a challenge, I think.
Yeah, and as you say, you can't really afford not to train them. So it's that sort of double-edged sword of getting good people, training them well, and then the grass is greener from time to time. But I can imagine the hole that could leave in a smaller business.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I think you just have to. I sort of took it personally initially, the first couple of times it happened, and then I realized, I think younger people particularly think less of long-term commitment and career than I would have done when I was their age. I think it's just the age we live in. And I've grown to respect that and to understand that and to deal with it. So, they've all done very well, and many of them keep in touch. So they're good relationships, which are important. And it's lovely to see people that you have taken in from university, blossoming and growing in their careers and working variously all over the world at the moment, actually. So that's really nice.
Fantastic. And you said about, you mentioned there taking it personally, which is easy to do. What have you learned about yourself on your journey so far?
I think I've learned that I can be too impatient sometimes, and I need to learn patience. I've learned that it's important to be in the moment. I'm the sort of person who will do something really good, or will celebrate something, but not celebrate for long enough. Because if we win a nice piece of business, my next question is, how are we going to service this? How are we going to keep deliverables up? How are we going to perform consistently? Instead of just, stopping for a moment, enjoying the view, taking it in and celebrating. And I think, I've learned in recent years to do a bit of that. Not as much as I should have particularly necessarily, but certainly a thing I should have done more often when I was earlier in my career. I think the other big thing I've learned is that it's a really, really good thing to be proactive in relationships. Whether that's, your relationships with your colleagues and your team members, whether it's with your clients, just generally in life, I think it's really good to be proactive in relationships and to be a person who makes things happen.
Yeah, just pay attention to them and develop them deliberately.
And be the one who does the running.
Yeah.
I find an awful lot of people sit back and expect everybody and everything to come to them. But it's much more satisfying, fulfilling if you pick up the ball and run with it yourself and make something happen.
I like that. Just be the one who does the running. Just taking a note of that myself. So have you picked up any favorite quotes or sayings that have served you well then on your journey so far?
Well, you're talking to somebody who's been around a few corners, Scott. So I'm also a person of faith, and that's critical to me in my personal life and my business life.
Uh-huh.
So as someone who's faced a few struggles in business, particularly over the years, one of my great quotes is, when life gets too hard to stand, kneel. And as a person of faith, that's important to me.
Yeah,
because, sometimes you feel the heat, you feel the pressures, and you can't really influence the outcome necessarily.
Yeah.
And as a person of faith, I have another option there.
And it just makes you more steady then.
It grounds you and anchors you. It's precisely what it does. And when you realize that, the things over which you have some control, and there are things over which you have no control. And that's where I get earthed in my faith.
Yeah, fantastic. And who would you say then has been the best coach you've ever had, and why? Maybe leads on nicely from that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this guy passed away tragically a few years ago. His name was Austin Hunter. And he was one of my early bosses in PR. I had joined a PR company in 1990, having been a regional newspaper editor. And it was Austin who recruited me with another girl called Sheila Davidson. And Austin was the best people person I have ever met. When you spent any time with him, you felt like you were the most important person to him in the world, when of course I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that great skill of building relationships and building trust was something that has helped me immeasurably. I'll never be able to replicate it, but I know the importance of it, and he had a huge impact on my professional career.
Yeah, and it's, as you say, it's not what people say to you, it's how they make you feel. So he was able to make you feel special.
And not just me, but everybody he met.
Yeah. And so tell me, what is it? You're sort of 3 years in. It's been difficult times. You're getting back to sort of pre-pandemic levels. What does the future look like for Tigerbond in Ireland, and what do you see as the main challenges moving ahead?
I think there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be challenges, economic challenges, business environment challenges, whatever they are, and we have to navigate through those, and we will. And business is resilient in general, and business always finds a way, and we will find a way to navigate whatever comes our way, whatever economic headwinds there may be. But I suppose our vision for Tigerbond in Ireland is to see our brand and our market presence grow, and our client portfolio grow as well, in the same way as our colleagues are seeing growth in England and Scotland and Canada at the moment, particularly. Ireland has lagged behind a little because of the way our economy has been slower to recover, but there's tremendous potential out there. We're doing really, really good work. And I suppose on a wider scale, the biggest challenge that we have as PR professionals is to navigate the transition from traditional PR into digital PR. And, somebody comes from the old school where it's all about newspapers and magazines and publicity. We've got to be ready to embrace the whole digital scene, but not through the baby out with the bathwater, because traditional PR is still really important, and there's a lot of credibility attached to that. Whereas the new breed of PR, the digital side, is a lot more accountability and a lot more science behind it. So it's how we navigate the economic challenges, and then the challenges of marrying our two disciplines together as the marketplace changes. Yeah,
interesting stuff. But again, the big takeaway for me is there's some things you just can't control, and business finds a way, doesn't it? We're not all just going to pack up and go home. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. I'm excited to ask this one. Okay, so if you could go back in time to speak to an 18-year-old David, what piece of advice would you give him?
Great question. I was on BBC radio with Vinny Hurrell actually last year, and he's got the questions you ask yourself as or the advice you give yourself as a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So this is going back a bit further. Yeah. I suppose I would give myself two pieces of advice. The one is learn patience, son. Learn patience. You don't have to rush to the next thing all the time. And go to university. I didn't go to university until I was 36.
Okay.
And I reckon that my career may have taken a different path had I gone through a more academic route and had a passport to travel, for example.
Yeah.
So I'd give myself, some advice on do a bit more learning and be a bit more patient. You'll get success. You just wait. It'll come.
Yeah. Very good. Listen, I enjoy that. So success is all about being patient and work on yourself. Go to uni. Develop yourself. as much as anything, so you can do better in business. Very good. I like that. Look, David, I really enjoyed our chat today. Thanks again so much for taking the time out to get involved. And I'm looking forward to sharing your thoughts and your journey with everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.